Thank you for having me tonight, and good evening. I'm happy to be back in the U.S. safe. And when I went overseas, I went through a tough time. And actually, when I arrived in Palestine, the Israelis kept me in the airport for 10 hours. At that time, I was confused. So I thought about it a little bit. I thought about the conflict between Israel and Palestine. And as we speak right now, the Palestinian people are suffering. And I visited Palestine for 6 weeks. And what happened to me was just a small taste of what they go through every single day. And the Palestinians do not have rights. And actually, when I went over there, I forgot that I had freedom. And I wish, now that I'm back, I wish they have the same freedom that I have. And I appreciate freedom more now that I'm back in the U.S. And I'm just an average kid I was born in Baltimore. I moved to Temple when I was 11, and I'm 15, and I'm in 10th grade right now. And I started school already. And now about my cousin, Muhammad Abu Khdeir. He was my first friend that I made when I went to Palestine this year, because I haven't been to Palestine for 11 years. So right when I went there, I saw him with all my other cousins. And then we became friends on the spot. We went out every day. We had so much fun. We stayed up all night. We were having so much fun. So one night during the month of Ramadan, I passed by him and I said hi to him. And I was on the way to the bakery so I could buy some food. And I said hi, and then I drove off. I came back, and then I see the cops were exactly where he was sitting. Then I asked, and there was only one of my cousins that were there. I asked him. I was like, what happened? He told me that they kidnapped Muhammad. And that, right when he told me that, so many things went in my mind. I was thinking, like, is he going to come back? Is he going to come back alive? What are they going to do to him? Where is he right now as we speak? Is he saying anything? Can anybody hear him? So at that point, I got a call the same second. He told me that he was kidnapped. And it was my cousin. He's like, what are you doing at night, 4:30 at night, sitting outside? And I'm like, bro, Muhammad just got kidnapped. So then all my cousins, all of Shafat came down. And they were like, where is he? We need to know where he is right now. And we were talking to the cops. And the cops asked me, like, were you the last person to see him? And I said yes. All I saw, he was just sitting there in front of his house. And then I drove off and I came back and I saw you guys. So later on, a couple hours later, we found out that he was killed. I found out actually first, and I didn't want to tell anybody. I just sat by myself. Everybody looked at me like, why are you sad? And he's like, and I'm like, and my cousins are like, why are you sad? He's going to be back. He's going to come back. We have to be positive. And I'm telling them, I hope so, in God's will. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, is this true? I don't want to think about it like in a bad way, but did he really get stabbed and burnt alive? Could that really happen? Could somebody actually do that to another person? And I was scared for his life. And then he was stabbed and burnt alive, and then finally everyone found out when they announced it in the mosque. And when they announced it in the mosque, everyone just dropped. They were like, is it true? We don't even know how someone could do that to someone else. And to even make it worse, they began to fire rubber-coated metal bullets at us, at everyone. They even were firing at my mother, at my aunts and uncles that were inside their houses. They were shooting at every house. And it was so sad and inhumane that they could do that when we lost someone in our family. We're the ones. My mom is still grieving, and my cousin's mom, my aunt, is still grieving over her son's death. When he was murdered, we thought to ourselves that we tried our best to think that he was going to come back, until we found out of everything. To make it worse, later on that day, I was on the side of the street when there were some protesters in front of me, and they were being and there were the IDF firing rubber bullets at them. And that's when I was on the side, and I'm thinking to myself, is this really happening in front of me? Are they really firing rubber bullets to the whole city, to my family? It made me think how how could this happen right in front of me? And then I heard Israeli soldiers behind me. I'm thinking that they're gonna run by me and just shoot like the rest of the soldiers did. They began to run after me. That's when I panicked. And everyone began to scream and panic too, and then they ran. And I began to run too because I panicked. I didn't know what to do. And that's when they stuck to me. 3 of them were running after me, one person. And that's when I jumped the fence on my left, and I was at a dead end. And that's when, it was not actually a dead end, there was like a little drop, like a 10-foot drop in front of me, which everyone jumped. I was going to jump it because I was scared, and so many things were running through my mind. So when I was about to jump it, they tackled me and punched me and zip-tied me. So I couldn't make any movements. I was zip-tied, leg cuffed, and beaten, punched and kicked in the face till I was unconscious. And even when I went unconscious, they kept punching and kicking me like I was a punching bag. And I woke up blindfolded in jail. I woke up like I thought I was in the same place, I felt like I was in my cousin's place. God rest his soul. I felt like I was in his place. I'm like, where am I? Are they gonna kill me? Am I gonna live through this? And I'm bleeding down my neck, and I'm bleeding down every part of my body. And I feel like my face is like a bubble because of how much it hurt. And after being 6 hours in jail, they took me to jail. After being in jail for 6 hours, they finally took me to a doctor. And when I went to that doctor, I went unconscious again. And I woke up and I saw my dad and my uncle in front of me. They said, you might come back home with us tonight, or you might go to jail. I thought to myself, why would I go to jail? They beat me up. And later on, I began to drink and eat. And while I was drinking and eating, the soldier came up to me and told me to go get dressed. I'm going back to jail. And I'm like, okay. I couldn't say anything. So I went to the bathroom. I changed back into my clothes, back into the same clothes. I was in a gown in the hospital. I had to change back into the same clothes that had all my blood on it and my ripped shirt. And I went back to the jail. And I saw all my cousins in jail, and it was so sad, like the way that it's inhumane, how you could just take a bunch of kids for no reason and beat them. I saw my cousin sitting right next to me, and his whole shoulder is dislocated, and I saw his shoulders bleeding. And I'm looking at myself like, how is this happening to me? How's it happening to all the Palestinians? How do they live through this? I stayed in jail for 4 days. Actually, on the second day I was in jail, they said I went to a court date. I went to the court, sat in a jail cell inside the court, didn't even get to go to my court date. They just tortured us. They put us in a cell inside the court. 9 people in a closed cell, and it was so small. We had to stand. We couldn't sit down. For 6 hours, we kept standing in that cell. We couldn't do anything until one by one was called, and I wasn't called. So that's when I returned to jail. 2 days later, I had another court date. That's when the same thing happened. I went to the jail cell, stayed in there for a couple hours. Then finally, I got out, and there was a bunch of media in front of me. I was getting a bunch of questions, and that's when right when I walked into the courtroom, I saw my parents. My face lit up. I was so happy, and I could, like, so many things were running through my mind. I'm like, I'm finally going home. I'm finally going home. I'll think about everything when I go home. And then the judge told me I was going to be on house arrest. Usually when I think about house arrest, I'm like, house arrest. I don't know what that is. Until she told me that I'm not allowed to go back to my city, to the city where my parents are staying. You're supposed to stay away from your family. Why should I stay away from my family? They're like trying to torture me. And so they did all this with no charges. That's what they do to all the Palestinian people, with no charges filed. So, in the day I left Palestine, they attacked all my cousins, again, the rest of them. They took half my cousins when I was there, and then they took the rest when I left. The night I left, they waited for me to leave, then they took my cousins. They ransacked my house that I was staying in. They took my 50-year-old uncle. The one, he got back from work and they took him. And my cousin that goes to work, he works every single day from 11 in the morning to 6 in the morning the next day. And they took him. He was so tired. And I really want to thank everyone who supported me. And it's sad that my cousins are still being persecuted. And the 3 cousins that were arrested with me, their names are Kareem, Muhammad, and Mahmoud. And they were arrested and they're still in jail because they're not American and they didn't have a video that showed the brutality of the Israelis. Now, I think all people should be treated equal, and no matter who they are or where they come from. We were all created equal, and we all deserve to have our rights. And I feel my cousins should have the same rights that the Israelis give the Israelis, Israel gives the Israelis. And giving Palestinians the same rights is a key to peace in the Middle East. I pray one day my cousins can feel safe outside, feel safe to play outside and have fun. And I don't want them to be scared when they're outside trying to play with their other cousins. And it's inhumane. I can't explain it. It's really sad. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I want to thank the U.S. campaign to end the occupation for having us here tonight. We're honored to be here. My name is Suha Abu Khdeir. I'm the mother of Tariq Abu Khdeir. I cannot begin to describe the pain of seeing my beloved son held in an Israeli prison without charges, denied medical care, and suffering from a brutal beating given to him by the Israeli police. When I first heard about the vicious beating he faced at the hand of the Israeli police and saw his bloody and swollen face and his unconscious body in the hospital, I feared for his life and I didn't know if he was going to survive. I could not bear to watch the video of his beating. What if he was screaming for my help and I could not be there for him? When I arrived at the hospital, when I found out about him being in jail and then taken to the hospital, I found an Israeli policeman at the hospital bedroom door, and I asked him if I can go in and see my son. He refused at first. After my husband had pleaded with him, he finally allowed me, but proceeding to say, "You cannot get near him, you can't touch him, and you can't speak to him." So I proceeded to go to the hospital room, and I looked over, and all I can see is this helpless body laying there he had a distorted face. I did not recognize him. I didn't know if he was alive, what had happened exactly. So I told my husband, please don't leave him, because he was handcuffed to the hospital bed. And I felt like since he was handcuffed to the hospital bed, that the same people that brought him to the hospital could take him right back. So I was afraid. The next morning, we got a call from the American consular, Josh Wagner, and he told us that he had made an appointment for all of us to go and see Tariq in jail. I found out, before Josh Wagner called, of course, I found out that they took Tariq back to jail, and I couldn't believe it. I knew he was on antibiotics, so the first thought I had was, are they really gonna give him his antibiotics? Are they gonna take care of him? Are they gonna feed him? And especially after seeing how the condition he was in, I couldn't bear to think that he was in a jail cell when he should have stayed in the hospital. So the next morning we went with Josh Wagner to the jailhouse. So when we proceeded and told the Israeli police that Josh Wagner had an appointment to see Tariq today, they said no one was going to see any prisoners, and that was it. And they closed the prison doors in our face. Josh Wagner could not believe it. He told them, I am not going to leave here until I see him, because I made an appointment with you guys, and I'm going to stay until I can see him. He proceeded to call the embassy, the US embassy and the Israeli embassy, back and forth for 3 hours, until finally they agreed to let him in alone. So when he got in, before he got in, I told him, please, Josh, can you just, let me know of his condition. Let me know, ask him how, is he eating? Are they giving him his medications? Because the medications are in Hebrew. So obviously he can't read Hebrew. So these are the same people that beat him that now are caring for him. I'm grateful to be back in America, safe with my son. But no, Palestinians go through what my son faced every day. Tariq was not able to grieve his cousin's death or attend his cousin Mohammed's funeral as a result of the beating Israeli police had given him that same day that his cousin was brutally murdered by the Israeli extremists. Instead of the police protecting us, they taunted us and told us that Mohammed was just the first to be killed and that 300 Palestinians would be killed for the 3 teenagers who were killed. My son and family have been very traumatized by this whole experience. Our cousins are still in jail, and the only reason Tariq is out is because he's an American citizen and his beating was caught on tape. While some of the Israeli officials tried to justify the vicious beating my son received by smearing his name, my son has never been charged with any crime. Nothing can justify restraining the hands of a 15-year-old child and beating him unconscious. Although as Americans, we enjoy great freedom in America, in Jerusalem, we felt worse than second-class citizens by the Israeli government, who treated us differently because we had a different religion and ethnicity. Like my Palestinian cousins, I felt that my family had no rights. My son was viciously attacked while in custody. He was in jail for 4 days. We were forced to pay $1,000 bond, and my son faced 9 days of house arrest away from his family, although he committed no crime and faced no charges. When we left to America, Israeli police raided the family home where we were staying and arrested the males there. They are still being held today without any charges. The Israeli police involved in the beating of my son must be held accountable so that no other mother must go through the pain that I went through. My son still suffers from body aches and pain and headaches, not to mention the emotional trauma he must now struggle through. I just pray that America and the world can have the same sympathy for the countless children who are wrongfully arrested or even killed by Israel, who do not carry a US passport like my son Tariq. None of this would have happened if the Israeli government valued the life of my son Tariq and other Palestinian, Muslim, and Christian children in the same way they value the life of Israeli children. Thank you.